Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Psychedelics Today webinar on 8 common psychedelic mistakes. So there's a lot of mistakes out there that can be made in the psychedelic world, especially when using, and we're going to run you through all sorts of things here on this little webinar. So the first major mistake we see a lot of folks making is not thinking about set and setting. Set and setting is super important. It's been discussed forever, and it's really the most fundamental part of a psychedelic experience. So, like, where are you at mentally? Where are you physically? What's it like? Are you physically safe? Like, are you in a place that makes you very uncomfortable, or are you very comfortable there? For instance, an unfamiliar park in an unfamiliar city, or your friend's house where you've been 1,000 times before. And with people who know you. What would you like to add to that, Kyle?
Also, with the set of having the mindset, like maybe it's not the right time to partake in a psychedelic experience. Sometimes people take them if they're in like not great mindsets, or maybe something's going on in their life and it's just not the best time. There's some people that say, it's a really great time to do it. Because you can figure a lot of answers out. But if you don't have like a good support network, maybe it's not the best time to do it, because these substances are really powerful and they can bring up a lot of internal stuff. And so having a good set and setting is probably one of the most crucial aspects of the psychedelic experience. Can really, in my opinion, make or break it.
Absolutely. I think there was a 1984 study that Strassman put together about how low the incidence of quote unquote bad trips were with the appropriate set and setting.
Mm-hmm.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, and in some of the clinical research, there's really like a lot of those difficult experiences or bad trips like don't really happen because they really try to create that set and setting, so they really minimize any potential harms or risks.
Right. And not having a plan or doing your research is super important. So you're like, oh, my buddy gave me this bag of powdered San Pedro cactus. This is the same thing as mescaline, right? No. There's all sorts of other compounds in there. And, for all you know, it could be dried pear, not psychoactive at all, or something that gives you extreme diarrhea. Like, you have no clue going in. Yeah, do your research on like what might it look like? What are the possible forms this thing should look like? Places like Irwit are a great place to go to check that out. Just planning for trajectory too. For instance, something like 2CB is going to be over in a few hours, mushrooms 3 to 6 hours, and LSD, like, you're strapping in for a day or so, 14 hours ish. So if you pop LSD at midnight, like, you probably won't be sleeping too much, especially dependent on the dose. If it's a microdose, maybe you'll sleep. But yeah, I just heard this the other day that the Orange Sunshine dosage was 300 micrograms, which is super intense.
Yeah, that seemed pretty like common back then for a lot. I think a lot of the stuff back in the 60s was around 300.
Yeah, which there's such a diversity of experience with LSD and dosage and psychedelics in general. Though we don't want to say like dosage is the only thing. It's pretty complex.
Yeah. And also with doing your research and having a plan, like what do the effects look like? One issue that we've been seeing a lot that's been popping up in the news and whatnot is maybe people take LSD thinking it's LSD, but then they have like a totally different reaction to it and not even thinking that it could possibly be like 2,5-I N-bomb or anything else. So maybe like doing some research on like what are some of the effects of the drugs, like what are some of the experiences other people have reported. I really think going on Earwid and checking out trip reports and just checking out some of the basic information can really just help you understand the process. Like, if you start having like a transpersonal experience of some sort, like, whoa, is this normal? Are there people that have experienced that before? It can really kind of help you just stay grounded. um, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, another huge mistake that is very easy to address is not testing substances. So test kits are relatively affordable. If you're buying drugs, you should probably be also buying a test kit. They last a while. They'll keep you and your friends safer. And what they do is test for the presence of certain compounds. So, for instance, does this test positive for MDXX substances like MDA, MDMA? Does it test positive for piperazines? There's, I think, a full 8-panel test that DanceSafe puts out, so you can even test for like indoles like LSD or psilocybin. So yeah, the thing it doesn't test for in that kit is fentanyl, but DanceSafe just put out some fentanyl test strips where you would kind of dissolve your drug into a liquid, for instance, like a vodka or something like that. And then you could dip your test strip in there. It tests positive at the nanogram per microgram level, I think. Nanogram per milliliter. That would be more like it. So if if it tests positive, it doesn't tell you what the concentration of that thing is. It just tells you that it's there. And that's the same with test kits, reagent test kits, and those test strips. So, which is better than nothing. Because right now we don't have the tech to really get a full material breakdown like a mass spectrometer would, or there's other fancy words Emmanuel Spherios and Mitchell used. Do you remember those devices, what they're called?
Wasn't there like a gas spectrometer of some sort?
Right. So what those do, Mitchell told me, is they actually give you a readout, but there's no, like, it doesn't say, X equals Y kind of thing. It's like you have to get like this reference database that would say, okay, this signature equals this thing in our database. So you would have to have a lab on the back end kind of testing and producing this data. Police have it. It's just not really affordable for psychedelic culture yet. Though a place like Lightning and Bottle or Coachella could easily afford that kind of thing.
Yeah, and Mitchell Gomez, when we in our master course for our integration and our psychedelic integration self-care course, he mentions that this is a totally different era of drug use in the sense that fentanyl is showing up in substances that doesn't make any sense. Like, why is it being mixed with like a bunch of different compounds? So I mean, it's really important. Like, there's definitely been cases where it's been mixed with cocaine, or I think one report out of Canada was that they found traces of fentanyl and ecstasy. So I mean, it's just really important to test your substances and know what you're taking, because with a lot of the research chemicals that are going around nowadays, you just really never know. And I think we saw that at what happened at Lightning in the Bottle back in early in the year. There's not a lot of data. I mean, we don't really know for sure, but there was a report that said this young woman died from LSD toxicity, but the chances are that it could have been 2,5-I bomb that she died from. There's reports that there are other substances in her purse or whatever that she could have been on, but we don't really know. So it's just really important to test your substances, even if you have just a straight up awesome person that you get it from, and they're always legit. It's never a bad thing to test.
Yeah, there was an instance. So for those who don't know, fentanyl is a hyper powerful opiate that I think less than a milligram can stop the normal person's heart. Just because that's what it does. It
Fentanyl's in the micrograms.
Right. I've had it, but only in a surgical setting.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really plan to use it recreationally. But yeah, very dangerous. And Mitch Gomez is the executive director at DanceSafe, so he's got some really great inside knowledge. And yeah, it's just impossible to know where it's coming from. It could just be somebody in a factory or warehouse grabbed the wrong bag. It could be as simple as the drug dealer didn't clean off the scale, when measuring the next thing, and therefore you test positive. But it's up for you all out there to make better decisions and try to get as much data as you can to make the best decision possible.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk dosages.
Yeah.
So acid's popular. Acid's relatively cheap. A lot of people say, "Oh, you're first timer? Yeah, just pop 5 in your mouth." Those people are not looking out for your best interest, especially at a festival setting. If you're doing therapy, maybe, but that's really tricky. But yeah, you want to get a really good idea of dosage. So check out places like Irwid and maybe cross-reference with a few other sites for the dose curve. Like, what are most people using? What does that feel like? The Shulgin scale is a really great thing to get a grip on, like how intense the experience might be for your dosage. And that's usually given in some trip reports you can find online. Airwid, Blue Light, other places, Shroomery. Yeah, and there is also this radically variant experience range. So somebody could take a half gram of mushrooms and have a really difficult time. Other people would take 2 grams of mushrooms and be totally fine, in terms of anxiety levels, at least. Because I think that's what we're really trying to talk and prevent, is like anxiety, fear, that kind of stuff from bubbling up, especially in a place where it's not safe to be anxious or fearful.
Mm-hmm.
In a therapeutic session, again, anxiety and fear probably fine to come up because it means you're working through some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what do you anything to add to this dosage?
Yeah, and I think, knowing your dose also goes back to doing your research. Chemicals, I mean, really go online and look at Irwid, look at places like Blue Light, Shroomery, forums on Reddit, wherever that is, and know your own body, because substances, our own biology makes up it really can determine how we react to these substances. So just because somebody says, "Oh, like this works for me," doesn't mean that's going to work for you as well. Like, really know your body. If you've done it in the past and somebody says, "Oh, try and do this time," like, if you're really sensitive to things, don't go overboard with it. Like, really intuitively tune into your body and make a intuitive judgment with that. And yeah, David Nichols, who is he was a chemist over at Purdue. One of the few people that had a FDA or DEA license to manufacture LSD and DMT and all these psychedelics. He mentioned that psychedelics are really interesting because they're not very dose dependent. And just as Joe is saying, it's kind of like things can come up even with a small dose. So from our framework, we like to talk about how Stan describes psychedelics, that they're non-specific amplifiers of mental processes. So, they illuminate what's in. And so even small doses can really bring you to extraordinary places sometimes.
And that's Dr. Stanislav Grof, founder, co-creator of holotropic breathwork and longtime LSD researcher, psychiatrist. Yeah, huge. And I would also recommend just starting small. Like, oh, you went to this concert. Oh, too bad you didn't have a full-on, MDMA or LSD experience. You survived and you didn't have to go to the hospital. Like, start small, know your body, and just be careful. Tread lightly, hasten slowly. There's a lot there. There's plenty of time, hopefully, for you to keep exploring these things, and it's best to have an optimal experience if you can. So, not vetting shamans or facilitators. This is huge. So, a lot of folks are going to Peru. Odds are really good somebody that has gone to Peru to do ayahuasca, drink ayahuasca, or some people are even traveling to Africa to use ibogaine. People are traveling to Mexico and South America to do ibogaine as well. But major thing you want to do, get a really good feel for the facilitator you're going to use. You're going to be paying that person a substantial amount of money. Odds are good you're going to pay him a substantial amount of money, him or her. And you're in a very vulnerable place when you're in the middle of a ayahuasca ceremony or ibogaine ceremony, and there is the chance they could take advantage of you in various ways, sexually, financially, whatever. And you don't want that to happen. Ostensibly, you're going for a therapeutic result, and that kind of thing could get in the way of your therapeutic result that you're trying to go for. Or it's just self-exploration. Like, rape isn't really going to help self-exploration, I don't think. So figure out how reputable this facility is, how reputable the facilitator is. If you need to spend an extra $500 to go to a really reputable place, maybe do that. Maybe, wait another 3 to 6 months, save up, do that. And hopefully you have that much better of a result.
Yeah. And with this ayahuasca tourism boom, everybody wanting to go down there. I mean, there's people just putting up signs and saying an ayahuasca shaman. And, do they really know what they're doing? It could be potentially pretty dangerous. I remember talking to somebody that it was pretty well connected in this world, and I brought up a retreat, and they had pretty big concerns about the person running it. And, they mentioned this and said, I've just heard really bad things about them, and da, da, da. It turns out a few months, I think, after I had this conversation, somebody died at the retreat, and the shaman did some really sketchy things and tried to cover it up, and it turned into this whole big ordeal. So, there's people out there that might want to take advantage of you. And like Joe said, you're probably doing this stuff if you're going to a retreat center to heal some sort of addiction or some sort of illness that you've been suffering from, and you've heard these anecdotal reports of people having really profound transformative experiences. You're probably in a very vulnerable position, and there's people that might want to take advantage of you because they know it could be easy money, and you're just in that position. So yeah, it's really important to do some vetting on retreats, facilitators, and just listen to your gut. If something says something's off there, listen to that. And yeah.
You're also at risk too of physical harm.
Mm-hmm.
Not even necessarily from the person, but the way they facilitate. Our model, holotropic breathwork, hitting your head is probably the worst thing that can happen. And we do everything possible to make sure you don't hit your head. You start off laying down. And as a result, the worst thing that happens is you pass out and that's it. But if you were standing up, you could really have a bad incident. And you're on a nice soft mat. For instance, a lot of shamans like to do their work outside. The recent Vice documentary, Hamilton's Pharmacopoeia, season 2, episode 1, with Hamilton going to do 5-MeO-DMT, there were some people standing up when they started. That puts them at risk of hitting their head or, getting a cut or something, which, it isn't the end of the world, but it's better not to happen. And also they were doing it in a river, which I thought was really tricky. That's not the easiest environment to contain, in my opinion. And just do the research, do the due diligence researching online. If you see a number of people complaining about somebody and they have safety concerns, maybe take that literally. Go, okay, maybe I'll do that on visit 20 to Mexico or something, maybe not visit 1. So, just be careful there. They're out there. Just do the research.
Yeah, and you bring up an interesting point about maybe standing up or doing it in nature, in a river. A lot of these plants and medicines come from indigenous cultures, and we have a much different cultural narrative. And I would say if something doesn't resonate with you, and it's you have to give away your power to that person, and you don't feel comfortable with that, really stand up for that, because this is your experience and your life. And if that doesn't match up with a narrative that somebody's trying to force upon you, I would be hesitant about it, and it's doing it in a river, and I don't know if I would do that. I think I would stand up and really fight against that and be like, I don't feel safe doing this. And I know it's part of your culture, but or actually, we don't even know about the culture of 5-MeO.
There's no historical continuous
Yeah.
tradition. There's no known tradition of psychedelic use of toad.
Yeah.
And maybe it was at one point, but it's not a historical continuous thing, so we don't have that.
And I could get like maybe the shamanic perspective on like, you're clearing the energy out using the force and spirit of the river. I mean, that's what I'm assuming why they're probably doing it there that way. Or maybe, as they said on one website, just to induce like swallowing, just to get that response. But if that doesn't work with you and it feels uncomfortable, like really, stand up for your power, because this is, I think, what psychedelics are about. It's kind of reclaiming like authenticity within yourself and reclaiming your own power. You don't need to give that away to a shaman.
Yeah, and there's plenty of facilitators out there, so spend the time. It's not you don't need to smoke 5-MeO DMT next week. You can wait a little bit. You don't need to drink ayahuasca next week. There's plenty of time. Next one. Remember that you are on a drug. So a lot of folks, this is pretty common actually, end up feeling like they're going crazy. Like, okay, I've permanently broken myself. Like, I've had this experience too, coming up on ayahuasca. I was like, okay, my soul is eternally corrupted now, and there's no turning back. I'm broken. Why did I do this? And I can only imagine that other folks have it, for hours. Sometimes, mine thankfully was like less than a half hour. But yeah, one thing that can really help is to remind yourself that you've ingested something, or have somebody else remind you you're on a drug.
Yeah, when we were talking to, I believe it was Neil Goldsmith, in our podcast, he talked about writing sticky notes and placing them around the house, because I don't think he had a sitter or whatnot, just for that own reminder. Because I mean, when you're stuck in that space and you don't have somebody to remind you, or you're not in the mindset to remind yourself, it could be helpful to kind of set that up. And that goes back to planning, like plan where you're at, and maybe that is part of the plan, writing out little reminders, being like, hey, I'm on a substance, or hey, I took mushrooms, or I took acid, whatever that is. Just because if you do get caught up in those thought patterns and those loops, it could be really terrifying, and that's where a lot of the anxiety and a bad trip can come up. And yeah, I think it's really helpful to remind yourself that, you took a substance and the experience is unfolding because of that. There's some people that like really embody that and then go do some really dangerous things, like go run out in the middle of the road, or, whatever that is. And yeah, it's just really important to try to remind yourself that you took something, and it will end eventually. Like, it will pass. There was a time where like I got caught in a thought pattern where I noticed my thoughts, and I was like, oh my God, I'm never going to stop. Like, I know that like I'm on something, but I know that the way that I'm thinking, I'm never going to forget this. And that terrified me. I was like, yeah, this is scary.
So another major mistake is not having support or a sitter. So yeah, often people want to do it alone, which is fine, but it can put you in a really bad and compromised spot sometimes. Say you were doing it in your bedroom in your apartment, and you had a really serious freak out, anxiety. You just really needed somebody's help. You don't have that option. Like, maybe you can figure out how to use your phone and get somebody on your phone to talk to you. Maybe you can call somebody to get them over, but the better option, if you can pull it off, which we think you should, is to have somebody there that's going to be able to help you. Some people like having a person in the room with them. I remember it was either Stan or Terrence McKenna talked about the more ideal scenario being a solo trip in a room by yourself with a bell next to you and the person 1 or 2 rooms away, so that if you need their help, you just ring the bell or yell out for them and they can come over and help you out. And that way you have both the luxury of a solo trip and being supported. But there is, for instance, Kyle, like tripping in the woods or something. Maybe you want somebody there to just make sure you don't stumble towards cars or
Hmm.
don't go too far off trail. Don't take off all your clothes and leave your cell phones in a pond somewhere. It helps to have somebody just keep you safe.
Yeah,
As awesome
definitely.
as it is, as awesome as it is being alone, there's specific benefits to having a guide or a sitter.
Yeah, and I think even like support and sitter, even in like a recreational setting, kind of goes back to having a plan as well. If you're at a concert or you're at a festival, it's like, who are those people you could reach out to? Do you have a plan on like maybe meeting back up or having like a safe space where you can feel supported if things start going kind of downhill or difficult emotions start arising? When I was doing some spiritual emergence training, we talked about having like a support network just in general. So like say if you start feeling like a spiritual emergence, or you start having like these like processes arise, like what type of friend could you reach out to, like knowing that you have maybe two, one, or three people in your life that completely understands what these experiences are about, and that are not going to pathologize it. They're not going to tell you that you're crazy, but they're really going to sit there and be with you during that experience and help you process and get through it. And I think that's really important, to identify maybe one person, two people that just can really understand what these experiences are, and the variety of experiences that can come up, that can just hold that for you. I think it's so important. Like I know I have one buddy that we always just chat when weird things come up, not even psychedelic related, just like weird type situations happen. And we're like, oh man, like this happened. Like I just need to chat about it because nobody else is really going to understand it.
Yeah. And I think that ties nicely into the integration plan, Kyle, like having some sort of set of things documented that you could do in the case you're not feeling the best afterwards. Um, so a lot of people, get, I think our podcast with Shane Moss kind of indicated this, like you can get kind of manic, kind of inflated, and, not feel the need to do anything different to take care of yourself. Whereas other folks, when in fact you probably should be, whereas other folks are, just not feeling the best, feeling really weird. I remember one plane ride back from Las Vegas, where I had a really weird time. Thankfully, I was geared up with all the equipment to be able to ride it out real nice. Just close my eyes and put on some music, and it was fine. But if I wasn't prepared, I would have probably had a little bit of an anxiety attack, locked myself in the bathroom for an hour. But I thankfully I was equipped with this knowledge to go, okay, I just did a lot of weird stuff to my body. Maybe I need to pay attention to that and kind of chill out for a little while.
Mhm.
So in our class, Navigating Psychedelics, we go over a lot of these different items for integration, anything from a hot tub to swimming to a massage to meditation, eating well, sleeping more. Anything else you want to add into that list?
Yeah, to creative projects, like what are you doing with your life? I mean, I think there's a lot of things that come through the psychedelic experience, and especially in breath work or whatever that is, any extraordinary experience where you can get insights on what to do and what do you do with that stuff afterwards. Like you get a message to eat healthy. Well, what does that mean? Or you get a message that you need to create something. Like what does that mean, and how do you move that forward?
Yeah.
And also kind of using um discernment with this as well. Like some like messages or downloads, whatever you want to call them, might not be the best idea. And from our breathwork background, we always say don't make any drastic decisions for the next like 6 months. Like you get the insight that your relationship isn't working well, maybe that doesn't mean you need to just like end the relationship right away once you get back. Like take some time and sit with it. And yeah, so we go over a lot of this stuff in our course. And also, you can get access to us during that, and just kind of get ideas and feedback and support if you've had a difficult experience, or maybe trying to learn how to integrate that. Um, yeah, Joe and I have been doing this work for a very long time, and have a lot of experience with breath work and working with non-ordinary states. So, this is why we put this class together, to really help people understand how to work with these experiences, and how to move them forward. As Stan calls holotropic breath work, holotropic meaning moving towards wholeness. So these experiences might move us in a direction towards wholeness, but what does that mean? How can we get there? How do we work with it?
Right. Uncovering the wholeness that's always been there, right? Like, it's just these traumatic or weird experiences that put us in a spot where we forget them. And our course, number one is how to stay out of the hospital, how to stay out of jail, but number two, how to maximize the benefits here. And we get into a lot of that. And there's so many benefits to be had. If you're an atheist, if you're a spiritual person, if you don't know, like, a lot of these things still apply. I think just about everything still applies to everybody here. And it's just about how do we take care of ourselves? How do we move forward with where we want to be in our lives, who we want in our lives, who we don't want in our lives. And yeah, how to test your drugs so you can keep on top of that. And we have a whole suite of master classes too. I think 11 or 12 master classes with experts in various fields of psychedelics. People from ayahuasca shamans to 5-MeO facilitators, to
spiritual emergence coaches,
yeah,
ibogaine facilitators,
psychiatrists, doctors. So all over the map, and we think it's a tremendous value. So if you want to learn more about that class, you feel free to write us, psychedelicstoday email@gmail.com. And you can always find it at psychedelicstoday.com under the Navigating Psychedelics button or courses. So yeah, anything else you want to add here, Kyle?
No, just thanks for taking the time to watch this, and learn a little bit more about psychedelics, and staying safe and being careful.
Yeah, stay safe out there, everybody. There's a lot of hazards, and just keep you and your friends safe, and hopefully we can keep this thing progressing for many years to come. Take care.
Thanks.